Good afternoon, everyone. How we doing? Welcome back to another episode of the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast. It is our inaugural episode of the MLB Hot Stove. Joining me today, my good friend, Mr. Corey Rain, diehard Yankee fan, and just truly a knowledgeable baseball guy that always brings credible content here to the show. So, how you doing, Corey? Welcome back.
Thank you, man. I'm doing really good. Ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, today we're going to be predominantly covering the top 10 free agents currently in Major League Baseball. And we weren't going to let you guys escape without giving you our opinions on what the New York Yankees need, being that is our favorite team in MLB. We're going to start it up with the top 10 free agents. Lucas Giolito, starting pitcher last year, played with the Los Angeles Angels. Prior to that, he was a star with the Chicago White Sox. I think it goes without saying that the Angels' top priority is going to be making sure, or at least trying to make sure, that they don't lose Shohei Ohtani to pretty much anybody else in Major League Baseball, because everybody wants him for the most part. So I guess my question to you, Corey, is this just a guy that they're going to let test the waters and not really hone in on? Or do you think this is a guy they're going to try to make sure stays in Anaheim?
I don't think they'll really go after him simply because I think if they miss out on Ohtani, you might see a fire sale of some sort.
Yeah, that's a good point. I actually share your sentiments on that because whether or not they sign Ohtani, I do believe that moving Mike Trout might be for the greater good of the future of the organization, especially if they were somehow able to keep Ohtani in an Angels uniform.
Exactly. And they just got Ron Washington as their manager, who I really think is a good hire. You should have seen the former Braves players sending their goodbyes to him on social media. They love the guy.
It's crazy how after his former team wins a world championship, he's back as the main man. And, he was a good manager.
Yeah, for the Rangers back in 2011, 2012.
Yeah, he had a good run with them. Back-to-back American League pennants. Unfortunately, came up short, especially microscopic when you talk about the Nelly Cruz play. We've spoken about that on previous shows.
So, I think it's a good hire, and if they do go young and start to sell off some players, I think it's a good guy to have at the helm.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Let me ask you this. Where do you think Giolito goes? Who are your few teams that you are considering for him?
I definitely think he definitely had some bumps in the road when he left the White Sox, but obviously the Dodgers need starting pitching, so they're going to be in on a lot of starting pitchers. I don't think the Yankees would touch him. I'm trying to think of other teams that need pitching. I mean, who doesn't need pitching at this point? Seattle's pretty rich in pitching. Baltimore could be a place you could see because they could beef up their rotation for sure.
I'm going to narrow this.
I would look at those teams.
American and National League teams that I think are going to lead the way for this. In the American, I agree with your Baltimore suggestion. In the National League, I'm going to go with the guys from Queens, the New York Mets.
Nice. Yep. And the Mets they're a weird team this offseason, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah, definitely strange for sure. I've got an idea where this guy's going. Number 9, Cody Bellinger, outfielder / first baseman. Played for the Chicago Cubs in 2023.
Won an MVP in 2019.
Yeah, not that many years removed. I know that he's been linked to the Yankees going all the way back to last season. I will say this, regardless of age, I still feel that he is reliable, and I think he's a guy that at this juncture is a necessity for the Yankees lineup.
I agree with you, and the only way the Yankees don't get him is if they get Soto, in my opinion.
I tend to agree. Soto would be like the real home run, no pun intended, Steinbrenner-esque move. I'm talking about the big Daddy Steinbrenner.
Right. But I do think the Cubs will try and bring him back though, because it doesn't mean they'll get him, but the Cubs are definitely going to spend money. They just got Craig Counsell as their manager, so they're not definitely not going to be weak in this market.
No, I agree with you there. I actually believe that they might be the biggest threat to the New York Yankees of blocking Bellinger there.
Yep.
He could potentially go back.
Yeah, but I think he's a perfect fit for the Yankees. If they don't get Soto, that Soto and that can be complicated sometimes. So, yeah, I definitely see that those are the main two teams for him. But there's always room for a dark horse, obviously.
Yeah, for sure. Yankees are going to get him. I wholeheartedly believe that. I think that is like literally their main target.
Yeah, and he's not that. He's like 27, 28. Like
Yeah.
he's a good age.
Yeah, people are acting like he's 46 the way they talk on social media.
Yeah.
This is going to be an interesting one here. Julio Urias played last year for the Dodgers, 23, had some off the field issues. Phenomenal record, 60-25 over the course of his major league career. While I do think the Dodgers are going to be in a big way on pitching of all sorts, I do believe that they're going to let him test the waters and probably move on.
Yeah, and I don't know if he faced a suspension yet or anything like that, but to me, it'll be a team that takes him on a high risk, high reward, high risk kind of deal, where maybe an incentive deal, because I don't think he's going to get the money that he would have gotten prior to the scandal,
I tend to agree. I believe that it goes without saying that once again, the Baltimore Orioles will be mentioned in this conversation, the Chicago Cubs. You can't count out his current team. It's not a matter of finances or what they can or won't do. It has more to do with just, I think a new start is needed after what went down last year. That's kind of where I'm at with him.
Yep. I could also see the Astros getting in there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're talking about an Astros team that was only one win away from yet another World Series appearance. So they are very much still in it. And, they're going to be replacing recently retired manager Dusty Baker.
Yeah.
I have a suggestion on who I would like to see manage the Astros. And I don't mean it like that I want him there. I just mean it as like from a baseball taking off the fan hat standpoint. I do believe that it would be interesting to see Carlos Beltran get his chance there after he was only Met manager for a few hours.
It would. There's been a lot of manager movement this offseason, more than I can remember in the last several years.
Yeah, I wasn't too mind blown with Dusty. I thought it was cool to see Ron Washington getting a crack now with the Angels. The Angels have just been a hard one to figure because on paper, year in and year out, I think they've been a team that we have higher expectations for.
Yeah, not that, we thought they would win it all or anything, but you would have thought they'd make the playoff a few more times than,
No, for sure, bro. Especially when you consider the amount of Hall of Famers that have gone through there. You're talking about Albert Pujols, Mike Trout's still there. Rendon has been a massive, massive disappointment.
I think the Rendon deal and the Pujols deal really kind of set them back a lot because they were bad financial decisions. Ownership is terrible. I know they were going to sell at one point, but they haven't done that yet. So,
yeah, it's tough, man. It just seems like they're always on the wrong side of too many contracts or too many bloated situations where they thought guys were going to produce and just didn't live up to expectations. I'm going to go with Urias. I'm going to say the Baltimore Orioles.
I agree.
This one could be interesting, and I have a feeling there could be a reunion coming here. Eduardo Rodriguez, starting pitcher, former Boston Red Sox player, but most recently was in Detroit with our buddy AJ Hinch.
Yeah.
Detroit is gradually becoming a better team, but I don't see them. I don't necessarily see them as buyers. Their salary still pales in comparison when you think about other teams around the bigs. This could be a potential guy that goes to the Chicago Cubs. I wouldn't even be surprised if Tampa came in and scooped this dude. But my gut tells me he's going back to Boston for a second stint with them. And it goes without saying that the Boston Red Sox definitely need some pitching.
They definitely do. I agree on all those teams, and he's a left-hander. Those guys of his quality don't really come around that much. It just depends really on the length of the contract.
Yeah.
But he's going to help somebody. And like you said, the Tigers are getting better, but he's probably not going to stick around. Yeah, I could see that with Boston. They definitely need it badly. They have a lineup, and they have a decent bullpen, but that rotation is terrible.
Yeah, the rotation is the biggest reason why they were in the basement of the American League East. Offensively, for the most part, they're not that bad. But to your point, when you're putting that many innings on the bullpen, it's going to come back and bite you. Not to mention when you play in arguably the best division in all of Major League Baseball, that's also another thing.
Yeah.
And weird because last year was the first time that the divisional games got shaved down from 19 to 12. So you don't necessarily have to kick ass in your division to still make the postseason. It helps nonetheless.
I like it better, personally.
I think it's better for viewership. I think it's better for fans who – it's like anything else. When you see everybody play everybody, there's something to it. I would have liked to see it be maybe a little closer to like 15 games in the division. I know nothing's perfect, but I will say that the whole interleague thing, it's just not a novelty anymore, and I think that's what used to make it so special.
Right. I thought the 18, 19 games kind of got exhausting.
I tend to agree. I think the magic number would have been about 14, 15.
Yep.
I still view 12 as a little too skinny in terms of teams in your division when you consider that you are playing 162. Of course, a solution for that could be to up the schedule to around maybe adding 20 games and maybe expanding the 40-man roster for more time. That could be a solution for something like that. But I do believe to a level, us as fans might view it as overkill.
It would be. I think there's been people calling for them to cut the schedule for a while, but I don't know if they'll do that.
They've already cut the game time. They need to chill on that.
Yeah.
What they won't be doing is cutting those salaries.
Yep.
Josh Hader, former Brewer, was able to really rise to prominence 2 seasons ago, got traded to the San Diego Padres, a team that most of us figured this coming year was going to, really make the next big step. That did not happen. They essentially became the Angels of the National League. A lot of high-priced talent over there.
And they might be having a sell-off as well.
Yeah, man. Fernando Tatis, Blake Snell. No shortage of big-time talent there. Yu Darvish, who, in my opinion, just throw it out there with the Yankees for a second. You did mention Soto.
Mm-hmm.
Darvish might have to be one of those tag-along things for a deal of that magnitude to go through. It's like you get something you don't necessarily want, and you get something that you really want. I think that's part of it now.
It's a sacrifice that you have to make at that point.
I tend to agree.
It's not like you're committing to Darvish for a decade or anything,
There's a lot of teams that could use the Josh Hader. It goes without saying. But my initial gut instinct of where Josh Hader ends up, I think he's going to the American League, and I think he's going to join the defending world champion Texas Rangers. That is my opinion.
Wow.
I believe that during the course of these playoffs, while they were able to get the job done, if there was an imperfection going into a longer season, I think the Rangers definitely identified that they need that shutdown guy. I know Mike Zappi, who's a diehard Ranger fan, suggested that maybe they go with Aroldis Chapman, Jacob DeGrom kind of bridge, because DeGrom, coming off all these injuries, might have to recreate himself similar to what a John Smoltz did back with Atlanta.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea for him, for sure.
Even if it's not necessarily manning down the ninth, in today's baseball, it's so weird the way they do analytics now, because sometimes you get your best bullpen option out in the seventh or the eighth. A lot of times it's really predicated off of what part of the lineup are you going to be facing.
Yep.
If it's
like
the order.
Yeah. It's like if you're facing the Blue Jays and you got Bichette and Vlad and those guys coming up in the eighth, you might use your closer.
Yeah, you might see Clay in the eighth, and depending, pitching, metrics, you might see a Wandy or someone else in the ninth, and that's usually when we get a little nervous. But
if the Rangers.
Go ahead, Corey.
I think the Rangers. You're good. I definitely think the Rangers should get him, because Chapman. You're not going to rely on Chapman at this point. He's 35 years old. He's not bad, but you just won the World Series. You got to double down, man.
No, I would think so. I mean, when you're a championship caliber team, that means that you have X amount of years to continue that kind of expected success. Yeah. And it goes like saying this is a legitimate closer.
And like we know, you never know when you're going to get back. There's no guarantees.
No, not by any means. I would also watch out for the Chicago Cubs pulling up here. And you cannot underestimate the San Francisco Giants and, once again, the Los Angeles Dodgers.
I think there's many teams. The bullpens now, Josh Hader is like a huge coveted prize, because bullpens are everything in baseball.
Thinking outside the box, you have Edwin Diaz, who's coming off of an injury in the World Baseball Classic. He's going to be returning to hopefully be the guy that he was before getting injured. Now, this is outside the box thinking. But if the New York Mets were to sign Josh Hader and to set it up where you have he and Diaz, that can compensate for a lot of other holes that this team may have.
Oh, yeah.
Kadai Senga going into his second year in the bigs rather. He's going to be stepping up to more of an elite level, in my opinion. The thing with the Mets, they have the money to do this kind of stuff.
They do. It's just they have holes, and you really think that their offense needs a big boost, and their rotation as well. But they're unpredictable, because they've kind of disappointed a little bit in the Cohen era, as far as he promised the world and always get the world.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this year's playoffs, us as Yankee fans can probably curse under our breath, because we saw a lot of former Yankees contribute for not only the eventual world champions, but for other teams that were making impacts. Yeah. Whether it's your Jordan Montgomery or Nathan Eovaldi, Aroldis Chapman, they were guys.
Yeah.
In the Mets case, taking it back to the American League Championship Series, you got headliners that are future Hall of Famers like Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer. Two guys that you are literally paying to play against each other. Not even a part of your organization. Not to mention that the face of your organization gets a World Series ring while not making a contribution because of the Tommy John surgery, that, of course, being Jacob DeGrom.
It's crazy. I mean, who could imagine making a wager on that? The Mets are going to sign Verlander, they're going to have Max, and then they'll be on other teams and playing while they're watching from home. Like, come on. That's
I think the thing that I find so strange about all of it is I don't think the Mets approached it as a worst-case scenario. What if we're not that good? What if we suck this year? When I think about the monies that they offered these two guys, Scherzer was a holdover from the previous year because him and DeGrom were co-acing.
Yeah, but I think
it's crazy.
I think they neglected other holes and thought that those two guys could save them. And then when the other holes started there was no turning back.
My issue with what the Mets did, you let a Chris Bassett go. You let a Taiwan go. They basically expected these two players, like if they weren't a big deal to what they did. And they replaced two dinosaurs that were kind of like two fish out of water. I'm not going to question the greatness of Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer. But quite frankly,
But
neither one of them was the right fit for that particular team at that
yeah,
particular time.
but that's a lot of money to bet on two guys that aren't in their prime anymore. Not to mention you had offensive problems you didn't really address.
No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I understand that Uncle Stevie is trying to win over his fan base by showing them time and time again that he could throw money around. But if you're not retaining the guys that you're spending all this bread on, what exactly are you doing?
Yeah. And it's crazy. They had a deal for Carlos Correa last offseason. It's just
Yeah, the San Francisco Giants, they're going to be a player in some of this stuff too because
yeah.
you talk about Correa, they barely missed him. You talk about arson,
Judge.
arson.
Arson. Yeah, arson,
Yeah.
yep.
John Hayden, that'll be timeless stupidity forever. Um, and I guess what I'm trying to say is the Giants are going to prove to everyone that they are serious. They were serious last year; it just didn't go their way. But I do think they're going to be throwing money around, and we have the biggest free agent that I'm going to speak on in a bit that I think could be heading there. This is an interesting one here, Aaron Nola. Last year, Zappy and I, on a couple of different shows, as well as off the air, mentioned to each other how we thought that, because remember, the Phillies didn't exactly show signs midway through that they were going to be the World Series representative or make another NLCS, which they ultimately were a game short of another World Series. At the time, given that they didn't want to talk turkey with Nola at the table, Zappy and I came up with a kind of an unorthodox trade that would see Nola going to Houston and Altuve going to Philly. Obviously, it didn't come to fruition.
Yeah.
So as I'm saying down here, he got avoided. He avoided getting traded. I think it's safe to say he is a top 10 pitcher. He's going to command a hefty payday. A year removed from not re-signing with them, they could go back to the table and knock it out. This is going to be one of those. I'm going to play the positivity card here. I think the Phillies are going to do what they got to do to keep him.
Really?
Yeah, I think the Phillies.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. But you mentioned Houston. I don't know why, but they were in my mind for Nola for some reason because I think it's a good fit for them. I also think the Cubs definitely would be in on him as well. Yeah, he's definitely coveted. He's not a flamethrower anymore, but he's he's a sinker guy. He has really good control. He's durable. The guy knows how to pitch. He's been in the big stage. Like he's definitely going to be a targeted prize for sure.
That brings us to, in some people's metrics, the great unknown.
Yeah.
Yoshinobu Yamamoto, starting pitcher. He spent last year with the Oryx Buffaloes of the Nippon Professional Baseball League. He's a three-time Japanese Triple Crown winner. He's also thrown a couple of no-hitters. Might be the biggest prize coming out of that country since, of course, Shohei Ohtani. I think when it comes to Japanese players, you always have to put the West Coast teams as the initial favorites because of the fact that travel is a lot more friendly.
Yes. Yep.
Your giant.
I know I've heard wrong.
Padres.
Definitely. I definitely think the Yankees want him badly, but I just don't know. I don't know if that he will decide on them. Like just same thing with Ohtani 5 years ago,
And I think with the Yankees, it's been a mixed bag with Japanese talent. Some guys worked out great. Some guys not so much. Okay, we'll talk about great first. Can't do any better than Hideki Matsui.
Nope.
And Masahiro Tanaka had a nice little run with us.
He did.
He was our ace for a decent amount of the years that he was on the team prior to the Garrett Cole era.
True pro.
Yeah, true pro. I do believe that towards the end of his Yankee run, he was nursing an injury that ultimately, in my opinion, should have required Tommy John. But on the flip side, bad Yankee acquisitions. Kayagawa, possibly the worst, followed by Hideki Arabu.
Arabu, yeah. And I know that he didn't start with the Yankees, but Kuroda was a really good pitcher.
Yeah, Hiroki Kuroda was a good pitcher. I agree with you there. I do agree with that. Um, as he goes, a lot of places that he could end up, but I'm going to call it now. This is going to be the big name that the Giants nail down.
Think so?
Yeah, I think the Giants, after striking out on Judge as well as Correa, I think this is the statement they make that they're for real and they need to nail one of these guys down, and I think that's what's going to happen.
I think it's between three teams. I think Dodgers, Giants, or Yankees, and it really comes down to whether he would toast. If not, then the two California teams will battle it out. But yeah,
That's going to be interesting. That will be interesting. Blake Snell, in my estimation, not the pitcher that he was when he was a member of the Tampa Bay Rays, but still a very viable option to help a team get to where they're going. But once again, this is a failed Padres experiment that brought so much talent together that they were just not able to put it in the win column.
and he's likely to win the Cy Young as well.
Yeah, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I think last year's runner-ups, the Arizona Diamondbacks, might show some muscle and try to make a play on him.
I agree with that. I think Dodgers. If the Phillies don't bring back Nola, you could definitely see them in play for him.
Yeah, that would be an adequate replacement, similar to what we saw happen in Atlanta a couple of years ago.
Yep.
When they decided
American
to get Olsen.
Yep. As far as the American League, I'm trying to think of teams that would be in on him. You're probably not going to see the Yankees go after him.
No, I would not see that whatsoever.
Baltimore, maybe.
Baltimore for sure. Toronto, I would consider a maybe.
Yep.
And maybe the Twins. Maybe.
They could definitely use some more starting pitching. And right now they're the default class of that division, but.
I'm going to go here. I don't agree with the experts that have Matt Chapman as the second best free agent.
I don't either, but well, it's okay.
But there is a dude in Queens that loves to overspend. He loves name notoriety. I'm just going to say what I think. Matt Chapman's going to be a Met. And by year 3, they're going to be frustrated that they did it.
Yeah, I think he's not an elite hitter to me. He's above average, but he's not great with the bat. So I think
the best is already behind him. I'm not saying
for sure.
There's some good years, but he's never going to be as good as he was in Oakland.
No, he's a nice player. He's a really good player. He's probably the best, besides Arenado, the best defender at third of the era.
I'll tell you where I'd like to see him go, but that would require them to not be so cheap. I'd like to see him go to the Brewers.
Yeah, it looks like the Brewers are going to be another San Diego and start to get rid of players. That's what I'm hearing.
And you got to feel for the fans because, they're close, and sometimes it just takes that little oomph, but they haven't showed that since they paid Ryan Braun the big money. And since they made a big deal to go bring in CC Sabathia as a rental.
Right. It's just disheartening for the fans. You contend, you're knocking on the door, and then they don't want to push you over the edge. They just are going to give up. I don't know.
Last but not least, Shohei Ohtani. With the injury, I think it goes without saying that his value might be kind of mixed measured by the injuries. Do we view him as a pitcher anymore? Granted, coming off the injury, he might not be pitching right away. I would have to think that it devalues him just a little because of the sheer fact that he is a DH, but a DH in the caliber of a Big Papi Ortiz, of an Edgar Martinez.
Oh yeah.
Top 10 in both metrics, a candidate to win his second career MVP. I think if Mr. Judge doesn't go down, he wouldn't be up there for that, but that's just my opinion. The Angels are going to make every last effort to retain him. But in my personal opinion, I don't think they're going to be able to succeed on that. This comes down to two teams in my estimation, and both of them play in the West Coast. It's the Giants, it's the Dodgers. And if I had to choose two wild cards for this prize, the New York Mets and the Chicago Cubs. But I just don't see this kid playing on the East Coast or in the Midwest for that matter.
I don't either. I agree on all those teams, but there's one other team that's a dark horse, and I think it's Seattle.
That I could see. Dave, like going back to the roots with Ichiro going there, yeah, that I could actually see.
Because they have a team now. Their pitching is elite. They have Castillo. Their offense came along in the second half. You think they couldn't use that bat in the lineup with Julio Rodriguez and all those guys? Oh, yeah. To me, it would be more for them to have him as a hitter. So they can wait a year and he can take pitching off and then do it the next year. But, yeah, I think he would be perfect for them. But I don't know. It's hard to compete. If you're Seattle, it's hard to compete with the Dodgers. Like those are big, big juggernauts to compete with for a free agent.
Do you have a final opinion on Ohtani before we flip it over to our team and what we need before we get out of here?
Yeah, I think I've heard rumblings about, a 12-year contract. I think that's silly. I think that's a mistake for a team to go that many years.
So I think 8 of the 12 years at the league.
Yeah,
you're always paying the back end.
To me, I think you want to aim for 8 to 10 years more so, and keep it there, because the pitching thing, we just don't know. I think eventually he'll have to either give one of them up or like become a reliever or something like that. I just don't see how he can sustain both for a high level for many, many years, but I could be wrong.
I'm with you. I mean, and the guy who he's been compared to since his inception into the MLB, Babe Ruth, had to give up pitching.
Yeah.
And you can't talk about Babe Ruth, my buddy Noah's favorite character, without talking about the New York Yankees. What do the New York Yankees need?
Well, they need outfield left-handed bats for sure.
Xanaxes for the many incompetent fans.
That too. They definitely could use another starting pitcher. But to me, the offense is a major, major problem that has to be addressed. They need lefties. Now's the offseason to do it.
Well, we did predict that there's a distinct possibility that we could see Cody Bellinger donning the pinstripes.
Yep.
Jason Dominguez, sensational before the injury. He will be back at some juncture. I think most people feel it will be midway through the year, probably around your 80 or 90 game mark of the new season. So you might have a solution right there. DJ LeMahieu, definitely going to give you some time at third. There have been some grumblings, some rumors that they could be moving on in a trade from Gleyber Torres. I personally do not believe that will be happening.
I don't want that to happen. I think it would be foolish. Unless you're blown away in a deal,
Absolutely. And as first base goes, I think it goes without saying you give Anthony Rizzo one more crack because of the fact that he's suffering from the post-concussion syndrome after the collision with Tatis. And you got Austin Wells, who I think becomes your catcher one and gradually gets groomed to be a better and better pro from former All-Star who is still on our roster, Jose Trevino.
Yeah, it's a nice combination. And then you have Peraza, who, can play multiple positions. He could take third base by the horns if he starts hot, and we know he can really field. So
yeah, I think
they have some nice
play the hand with Torres and LeMahieu, but I got to think that Torres has priority over LeMahieu. think you see LeMahieu kind of jump a little from third, and to give Rizzo the occasional off day, he will do a little bit of first base.
Yeah, he's a really valuable player. The Yankees have some nice pieces. They just need a couple of big impact bats to put them over the top, you know?
Now, I tend to agree, Corey, but I do want to ask you a hypothetical. You did mention Juan Soto. I did mention that Yu Darvish might unfortunately have to come with him. You got to give something
Yeah.
to get something and get something that you maybe don't want. Kind of like what happened with the Josh Donaldson deal not too long ago. In your
Yes.
opinion, let's just say if I'm right, and it's Soto and Darvish as an inclusion, what do the New York Yankees need to give up to make this happen?
You're probably looking at them giving up.
I hate to say it, but I think the Martian is part of this.
I think so too. And you're also going to look at Thorpe, one of their prospects, who was the best pitcher in their system. Yeah, you would have to start to look at top prospects like that. They're probably not going to take, a major league ready guy because they would, but to me, they're going to be looking for youth.
I think you're going to get a suggestion for Volpe because they also still have Sweeney down there. But I think there's more probability that a guy who hasn't already broken into the pros gets moved before an Anthony Volpe or before current guys. If there's any possible way that the Yankees could move Stanton in a deal like this, do you do it? Or do you welcome Soto coming over to hope that it enhances Stanton in this lineup?
No, I would do it.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think it's time. If the Yankees could find – because that's the other part. They say you don't get what you want here. You got to give away what you don't – it's always like a chess match. But the salaries to a metric make some sense from both players if you send Stanton that way. But the Yankees a lot, and they got to be certain that Juan Soto is the right guy.
Yep, and you got to think too, like they will look to trade from areas of depth. They have a lot of infield talent in the system. Shortstop is loaded. They got Arias, who was one of the international players they got. They just drafted another shortstop.
Yeah, they're stockpiling shortstops, and the God's honest truth is these could be the key focal points that make it possible to make a deal like that, to get yourselves a player on the level of a Juan Soto. In my genuine opinion, Corey, I don't think it's going to happen, though. I think you're looking at Bellinger. I think you're looking at what has already occurred in the Bronx, which is the youth movement. And I think the Yankees are going to take the long, patient road with this. My bigger concern is Carlos Rodon going to bounce back properly? Can Nestor Cortez continue to be a starter? And are we going to see some action between Michael King as well as Clark Schmidt taking the next steps into finalizing this? Bye-bye Domingo Germán. As you know, he's gone, and Luis Severino's not far behind.
Exactly. I do think they're going to make a big move of some sort. It'll be a bat, in my opinion. I would love for them to get Yamamoto.
Yeah,
they got Yamamoto, and that.
They get Yamamoto.
Yep.
That changes everything. But I've been watching the Yankees my whole life, and I never really remember an era of Yankees baseball where they were so offensively challenged. Usually, it was the other way around. They score a lot of runs, but the pitching was. This is uncharted for 2 consecutive years, really. Even if you track it back, oddly enough, to Judge's 62 season, you don't figure a guy to hit 62 bombs when the offense struggled the way they did.
Yeah. They were good in the first half, but you saw in the second half they really, really struggled, and Judge was basically carrying them.
Now, can I finally suggest this? I think I speak for a lot of Yankee fans and baseball fans in general. Can we please put him in the 3-hole?
Yes.
Is it? I understand the whole analytical value of getting him an extra at bat, but I'm tired of these solo home runs. And then when you look at how many 1-run games we lose, I think it's a valid argument as to why this dude needs to be hitting a little deeper into the order.
I agree with that. He needs that protection, though.
Oh, and to your point, that is another reason why it hasn't happened yet. Corey, good job today.
Yeah, man.
This is just one episode of many to follow. We are definitely in the thick of football season. NBA hockey are still just kind of in the infancy stages of their seasons, but this is going to be a recurring thing around here where we're going to be hitting you with more and more baseball talk in the off
Oh
season.
yeah, and this hot stove is just getting started, man. It's gonna be lit up here soon.
Yeah, it's just barely warm. Pretty soon it's going to be on broil. But for now, definitely just the beginning. For my friend, Mr. Corey Rain, I am your host, Richie. I wish you guys a great weekend. And we will be back with some announcements soon about our next shows. I'm also on a personal vacation. So the 50 years of hip hop video that I've been talking about, I'm finally going to start getting to work. I know this guy on the other side might be looking forward to that as well. Details to come. Details to come. Also, keep an eye out for Idris. He's going to be dropping that college football preview, and details to come on that as well. You could also catch Idris on the Mixperience as well as on the Casual Convo show. Until next time, I am Richie, and for Corey, we are out.
Take it easy.